Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about continual tension. It seems like that's one of the things that you'll see a lot of people out there, particularly over in the bodybuilding end of the fitness spectrum. And it's an interesting one for me as a strength coach because people will bring it up and they'll say, well, a lot of these people say continual tension is really important. They'll say it's really important for making your gains. To which I would say, what's your evidence for this? What does the research say? What's the mechanism behind it? Right? And when you start looking at it, it kind of ends up being one of those things, and this might be an unpopular thing to say, it's one of those things that I think literally is nothing more than personal preference. It's kind of like, you got Michelle there on wearing blue while she works out. It's really on that level of saying, well, this coach told me that wearing blue outfits will really help with my gains, and I wore a blue outfit and I made gains. It's like, yeah, but do you really think that's the reason? Okay, do you think that's the reason, or do you think it's because you trained hard? Do you think maybe it's because you were training hard within your recoverable volume with some progressive overload, and you ate and slept well enough to make some gains? Okay, because I think that's the point. They'll bring that up and they're like, but it's creating fatigue. That continual tension is creating fatigue. It's like, okay, yeah, it does create metabolic fatigue, and that metabolic fatigue, as it accrues, creates more mechanical tension on the individual muscle fibers as they fatigue. Yes, but so do pause reps. Okay. What? Yeah. So let's say you take a bench press or anything else, and you pause at the bottom or you pause at the top. If you take it to 1 rep in reserve, okay, you take it to 1 rep in reserve, or you take it to failure, and you do the same thing with the continual tension, do you really think one of them created more fatigue than the other? No, they created pretty similar levels of fatigue, right? You worked just as hard on each. The muscles worked just as hard on each. It was just a different way of reaching the same goal. And what is that goal? What is it that we are looking for? What is the stimulus that causes a muscle to grow? Applying mechanical tension. That's workload being put on the individual muscle fibers. Okay? And if we do enough work that we get tired in the set, the muscle starts to get tired. It's because we're creating fatigue through different muscle fibers in that set, right? And other muscle fibers are then having to take over. And as we get further into fatigue in a set, the highest threshold muscle fibers have to do work. And those are the ones that are most responsible for muscle growth, that we see the most muscle growth in, right? Right? We see the most muscle growth in those. So at the end of the day, when you're doing an exercise, what happens? If it's a challenging and hard exercise for that muscle, it's going to get fatigued, and that fatigue is going to put more tension and work on more muscle fibers. Well, that's what stimulates muscle growth. Now, we also know that the lengthened position, and that's where a muscle is stretched. If it's an exercise where we're stretched under load, right? That stretching of the muscle does seem to be where the best mechanical tension and that fatigue is accumulated on that muscle. Okay, and as long as your continual tension really works that area also, because in some cases people are chasing mechanical tension and skipping that part. Well, that's actually a little bit less effective for muscle growth. If we go off the scientific data, the research we have in the lab that studies, hey, how does a muscle grow? Okay. stretch mediated hypertrophy. Again, that's loaded stretches, not just stretching with and holding a stretch. I'm talking about weight stretching against there and then having to contract back against a weight. Right? Loaded stretching of a muscle. In other words, think about your quads at the bottom of a squat or a leg press, right? That's that position. Your pecs at the bottom of a bench, whether it's a dumbbell or a barbell. See what we mean? That's what we're talking about. Bottom of a row or a machine row or dumbbell row, barbell row, whatever. And we're stretching that lat out. That loaded stretching part is really a moneymaker. All right, that's a big deal. Especially when we look at what happens in the lab, like that area is huge. That is where most of the gains are coming from. I'm not saying that the rest is irrelevant. I'm just saying that's where most of it does seem to really be maximized. And then everything else is just kind of icing on the cake, so to speak. A little less important. Not unimportant, just less important. Understand the difference. Okay. So at the end of the day, they're really just two paths to the same end result. You can do pause work, you can try to do a continual tension. I don't think it matters. The data says it doesn't matter. Now, from a strength perspective, we could oftentimes point out we're going to get the best neural gains from doing, a full range of motion exercise and even pausing and everything. So if we're chasing that neural adaptation also, that might be the wiser choice. In order to not decelerate, you lock a movement hard, so on and so forth. Probably better for the strength end, which is one reason I'm not a big fan of people skipping those things for most of their work. Following through helps with, rate of force production, helps with power, force generation, the ability to be really strong. Hey, but the hypertrophy side, I don't think it matters so much. There's just simply no evidence for this continual tension principle. It doesn't even seem to be a relevant factor, right? The only time maybe is because when people can't maintain that continual tension, they know that they reached muscle failure. Well, we know getting very, very, very close to muscle failure, produces the best muscle growth on a set per set basis, right? The actual achieving failure doesn't matter. It's just getting very, very close. Reaching failure doesn't seem to actually really cause more growth than getting one rep away from it. But I guess in some cases, if people struggle to judge that continual tension will have them hit that spot, right? Where they can't pause and rest to try to squeeze out another rep. So they do reach that level of fatigue. Okay, in that case, maybe that's why some people feel like they get that benefit. But otherwise, it's mainly just because you trained hard. You trained hard, you ate enough food, and you slept enough to make gains. It's not overly complex. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.